I was born in Africa and the bush runs through my veins. There is no other place like it on earth. I am an ecologist, and what fascinates me is not just the big grey giants that roam this landscape, but it's about all of the intricacies that make the system what it is. These iconic species could not survive in the landscape without the rain that feeds the grass, the insects, and all of the organisms that make the system function. I learn more and more about this every day. Manyoni has been my home for the last 14 years. So come with me and I want to show you my wild backyard. It's a Thursday afternoon and I'm on my way to the office and bumped into these guys. Nice traffic to be worrying about. I'm just absolutely enjoy spending 20-40 minutes with these guys as they just go about their business and just wait for them to clear the road so that I can get through. Lots of fun. We are here in Manyoni. Manyoni is situated on the east coast of South Africa, and behind us here is the Ubombo Mountains, which is the most southern tip of the Great Rift Valley, which runs all the way north through Africa. Our climate is hot and humid summers and sort of warm, dry winters. We depend on summer rainfall, which is absolutely crucial. Normally starts around September, and we get about 600 mils per annum, which also is great for quite a large number of animals because of the high nutrition in the grass. This is a harsh environment. While the land has been used for many purposes over the past several hundred years, human inhabitants have battled malaria and cattle diseases for as long as they've been in the area. Ticks and parasites have limited human settlement due to their impact on cattle farming. But they too are an important part of the local ecosystem, as they sit on the grass waiting for a passing antelope or giraffe to brush past, and then attach themselves to the host, sucking their blood, until a specialized bird species, the red-billed oxpecker, will eat them off the animals and relieve them of the parasites. So giraffes are generally not very nervous of people, but I am walking very slowly and on foot, so they're more nervous than they would have ordinarily been. And then if you change your shape and so that you don't look like a human but you look like something else, and then they tend to relax. So it sometimes works with giraffe because they're very curious animals. Definitely seem to be a little bit more tolerant of me now, and that's because I can't quite figure out what I am. A driving factor in the establishment of Manyoni was the Black Rhino Range Expansion Project. This project released the founder population of black rhino here into their new home. This 23,000 hectare reserve is the product of 17 dedicated landowners who dropped their internal fences in 2004 to create one contiguous protected area for the protection of wildlife. Lots of rhino tracks here. You can see a big animal wallowed here in this mud, and it's definitely a rhino. I can tell from the tracks. This is actually specifically black rhino tracks, And then if you look at the imprint, you can see it's like little folds and creases from rhino skin with those thick hides. And they've been rolling around here, and it's critical for them in terms of parasite control. So what they would do is they'd roll around, cover their bodies in mud. It obviously also cools them down. But then as the mud dries off, the ticks also dry out with the mud and fall off. Very, very good way for them to manage their parasites. In addition to oxpeck is obviously helping. You can see all around that sort of brushed past all the little plants and things where they've rubbed all the mud off. So, typical black rhino habitat, and here you can see where they've been feeding. If you notice, the cut on the stem is at a 45-degree angle, which is so typical of black rhino browsing. They eat trees, mainly woody plants, and of course it's acacia trees, and the landscape is full of it here, and they absolutely love it. So this is obviously where we find them, and they've obviously been moving through here feeding. This is very fresh. Got 3 black rhino together, which is unusual. They're normally quite solitary. What excites me about these animals is that they're always unpredictable, but also quite aggressive and very territorial. And the bulls defend their territory with everything they've got. You've got a lot of respect for these animals, and you have to sort of have your wits about you when you're on foot with them. Because the situation can change very quickly. If the wind direction changes, then their response could change significantly if they smell humans. And there you go, you can clearly see him picking his lip up to smell. So I'm going to move back a little bit because he's approaching. I need to give myself enough space to get out of the way. Obviously, to stay safe, we are staying in the tree. That is so exciting. Aggressive. Black rhino are notoriously aggressive and defend their territory, so he's coming up here to find out who's in his territory right now. And so he picked up a little bit of our scent and realized it's not another black rhino male but human, so obviously he's a little bit nervous and then moved on. But he'll come back or turn around quite soon. They don't necessarily move off completely. It's fine while we're in the tree. But he's going to hang around now, and we still have to get out of the tree and get back out of here. That's going to be tricky. The tectonic forces that shaped Africa's Great Rift Valley are at play here too. The southern tip of the Great Rift Valley actually begins in Egypt, and it runs south thousands of miles along the entire length of the continent, until it finally comes to an end as it reaches the southern tip, which flanks the reserve to the east. This mountain range plays a major role on the weather in the reserve. So during summer, we see the animals are spread throughout the park as there's water and grazing everywhere. But as the winter months approach, they're starting to move much further distances to try and find suitable grazing as well as surface water. So it's quite amazing how everything in this environment is adapted to survive here. And I want to show you something really, really amazing. There's this grass. It is so exciting. What happens if you wet it just a little bit, simulating the first summer rains, and what then happens is that the seeds start contorting and twisting just with a little bit of moisture on them. So amazing. The whole thing starts moving. And the end of the grass where the seeds at end up burying and pushing into the soil, and then obviously can germinate and grow into a new plant. I love grass because it's such an intelligent part of the system and wildlife depend on it. Rainfall is the lifeblood and source of all life here. And when we look closely, we can see the reaction that the plants have unraveling their leaves and embracing the moisture. The change is palpable. You can taste it in the air. Flowers start to bloom. Taking advantage of the situation, insects use flowers to ambush their prey. And tiny spiders who mimic the flowers sit and wait for their victims as they come out to collect the pollen. Spiders are fascinating creatures. They've evolved long before the dinosaurs walked the earth, over 300 million years ago. Interestingly, only about 50% of all spiders make webs. Others hunt down their prey or burrow underground, and some species actually live underwater. What I really enjoy is going out on these misty mornings and watching these webs closely to see how the dewdrops are formed on the silk. It creates these tiny beads and droplets that catch and refract the light. It's like the felt is adorned in its own unique jewelry. And from afar it looks like strings of pearls that have been strung from tree to tree. Not all the silk made by spiders is the same. They make silk with different properties and for very specific tasks. Some are tougher and stickier and more flexible than others. So I want to show you something, and it's a golden orb spider. Quite a large spider, and the reason why it's called a golden orb is because of the golden color in the web. They're absolutely amazing spiders. So if you look at the legs closely, you'll see how they point inward as opposed to outward. Wandering spiders' legs point outward, but these are specially designed to help spin this web. What they would do is they've got sticky portion of the web, which is sort of on the internal side. You see how it sticks to my finger? And that's because part of this is part of the sticky part of the web that captures the prey. And then these anchor wires are non-sticky strands, and they're also an early warning system for her to know that there's prey captured in the web. You'll also notice how there's quite a lot of old carcasses that she's accumulated in the center of the web. And they do that to make the web a lot more visible. For instance, so birds and all sorts don't end up blundering into the web. The web obviously does get damaged, So what she would do is she would consume quite a large part of the sticky part of the web and then respin it on a daily basis to ensure that that stickiness stays. If you look a little bit closer here on the back end, it's very hard to see. You'll notice there's a small little spider here, and that's the male. See, there's another one there on the front of her. So if you look closely, you'll see there's a number of males on this web. There's 1, 2, and another one in the front here. They're much, much, much smaller than the female. And the markings on their body are so specific. They've got these white dots on the abdomen and these lines along the side with a bright orange color in their legs. Really beautiful spiders. Some spiders don't like to be noticed, and it takes a keen eye to spot them. If you look very closely, you'll see there's a bark spider on the bark of this tree. See if we can get him to move just a little bit. It's a bark spider, and you have to look really hard to see it. I'm touching him here now. He is perfectly camouflaged on a knobthorn tree, which has all these gnarly knobs all over the bark. Interesting thing about them is they actually make their webs late afternoon and then catch insects at night, and then during the day they eat their web and start the whole process at night again. So you can see he's busy now eating his whole web, and he'll follow it all the way up until the tree. And it's such an amazing association between the bark spider and the knobthorn tree. The rivers only flow after the rains, and the flagship river of Manyoni is called the Msunduzi River. So this is where it all begins, and this is what really matters. Water, rivers, rain. Without it, there is just no life. The Msunduzi River doesn't flow year round, but we've had late thunderstorms and it's been absolutely amazing. The Msunduzi River is classically stunning. It's flanked by huge fig trees which provide food and shelter to a host of species. These sycamore figs produce an abundance of food almost all year round. The figs, although edible, are roughly the size of a marble and vary in color. Monkeys, birds and bats eat the fruit directly from the branches, while the antelope and warthogs devour what falls to the ground. This small area has over 400 species of birds, which come in all shapes and sizes. That's more birds in this small area than can be found in the entire country of Chile. They come to bathe in the small rock pools where the water's caught. Birds aren't the only creatures looking forward to taking a bath after all the good rainfall. During the summer months, the rains fill all the water holes, and these places become super popular, with large herds of animals coming down to drink. And even small animals like warthogs come down to just wallow in the mud. Species like crocodiles become a lot more active because the climate is so much warmer, and so they'll lie in the shallows and wait for unsuspecting prey to come and drink. The animals in the park have to drink on a daily basis, so the waterholes are very, very busy, and all the species that gather around these waterholes often also results in competition, where they have to fight for a space at the water's edge. This river only flows for a handful of days each year, and it's from this main artery of water running through the reserve that the rolling hills spill out to form the grasslands. This wide open space provides a haven for the introduction of many critically endangered species. One of the endangered species we monitor is the African wild dog. I've come to this area where we suspect the wild dogs might be denning. The whole pack has moved and they're out hunting, which is great. So I'm coming to try and sneak in and put the camera trap up at where we think the den site might be. Ideally to catch a glimpse of the pups and to make sure whether they've had pups or not. So I'm going to quickly go in and put the camera up and try and get out of here as soon as we can. Our wild dogs, however, have had a very cumbersome past in the park with human-wildlife conflict. Ideally, if these pups are able to grow till adulthood, it would make a significant contribution to these critically endangered species. In just a few days, we get our first glimpse of the wild dog pups inside the den. The litter of pups appear healthy and inquisitive. The mother's job of keeping the pups safe inside the den is quite the task. The natural habitat of African wild dogs is becoming increasingly fragmented due to an increase in land development and a limited number of protected areas in which these populations can thrive, making places such as Manyoni private game reserve increasingly critical to their survival, as well as that of illegally trafficked wildlife. Oh, cool. This is a leopard tortoise, definitely a female by the shape of the plastron here. They hibernate in winter, and interesting thing is that they say you can tell the age of the tortoise by the number of rings on the shells here. So the little ridges are winter months. That's because of slowed growth in winter when they're hibernating. And so obviously each ridge and little bump will be 1 year, and so you can count them all and figure out how old they are. This is a very, very beautiful, quite a big female for our area. They generally don't get much bigger than this. So we're going to leave her to go on her merry way and not hassle her too much. We're mostly hands-off when it comes to wildlife management and managing these protected areas, and sometimes with certain projects we have to get really hands-on. Pangolin reintroduction program being one of them. There he is right here. These amazing creatures, unfortunately, is one of the most trafficked animals on the globe, and so when they're confiscated from the trade, we eventually end up having to rehabilitate them back into the wild. Little pangolin you see here is Corey, and she was confiscated from the trade, hospitalized, and when she was strong enough, brought her into the park. She came here as a very young animal and very, very low weight, but she's adapting very well. So you can see this is a little tag that we put on her, and we just drill a little hole in one of the scales, and she doesn't even notice it there. It hardly inhibits her movement in any way. But it is critical for us in order to monitor her once she's roaming free. She's nearly there. She's nearly at the point where we could now release her and she'll be a wild pangolin. So the reason why pangolins are one of the most trafficked animals on the globe is because of the scales. These scales are made of keratin, which is the same substance as your fingernails. And The scales have no medicinal value, but culturally believed to be able to cure all sorts of ailments. And so what would happen is they'd capture the pangolins in the wild, and they'll take the scales and ship it to some of the Asian countries where they are being used for medicinal use. And the worst about it all is that these animals are so defenseless. They don't make a noise, they've got no weapons to defend themselves. And so that's the really sad part. You know, they've been on the planet for more than 80 million years, and now as humans we are basically destroying them, even though they've evolved to be able to be here for so long. And so Corey is in the soft release program, and what we do then is we are monitoring her ability to feed in this new environment that she's in now, what ants she's feeding on and what termites she's feeding on, and then monitoring her weight, which is also critical to ensure that she gains enough weight during this time. They can eat up to 1 pound of ants and termites in one afternoon's feed, which is absolutely incredible. They've got these really, really long, sticky tongues. The tongue actually starts sort of low down on the abdomen and runs all the way through the length of the body, and then another like 20 centimeters outside the body. So incredibly long tongues, and the tongues are super, super sticky. So if you look at the mound, you can see all of the termites, and what she does with her tongue is she puts them through all these little passages, and then they stick to her tongue, and she's able to slurp them up this way. Super fast movements where she flicks them through all of these cavities and feeds on as many of the termites as she can. It's just absolutely so amazing that they've adapted to feeding on this as their main source of food. When you get a bit closer to her, you can actually hear her sniffing, and that is her slurping up the termites when she feeds. So we'll monitor her and ensure that she's feeding well. So we're putting Corey in a bag. She's perfectly fine, but we have to get her weight to determine whether she has gained enough for this afternoon. And she's doing very well. She's on 6.05 kilograms, which means she's had a very good feed. Yeah. It's pretty amazing being able to do this kind of work with pangolins. Before we started participating in this program, I'd never seen a pangolin in the wild before. And now working with them and learning so much about how incredible these animals are has just been mind-blowing. And we're very fortunate to be able to work with them this closely, especially considering the fact that from a global perspective, we don't know how long they're going to be around anymore. It's been a very good day for her. She's going to go back into a little sleeping box, not this one, another one, and to do the whole day again tomorrow. It's bedtime. She's belly full and needs some rest. What I really love and enjoy about my life and my job here is being able to learn about how all the puzzle pieces fit together and how every action's got a reaction, and being able to see that firsthand every day is an absolute pleasure. But ultimately my greatest reward is knowing that we are conserving this space and these species for future generations to come.